Stop qualifying the prospect to see if they're qualified for what you sell. You want to do this one thing instead. This is Jedi mind stuff. You want to do this. You want to build the prospect into this, the identity of the person who becomes a buyer. Now, why is that critical for you to master? Because most salespeople try to, ask qualifying questions to see if a prospect is qualified for what they offer because maybe they're not looking for that, or maybe they don't have the funds or funding and they try to qualify too early. Here's the reality. Unless you're selling a $10 million solution to a homeless person, most people can find the funds or funding if they really want to, if you learn how to build them into the identity of the person who wants that. And I'm going to show you a few frames you can use to actually start doing that, okay? Because it's not like the money does not exist. They're already spending that current money on something else that in their mind is more of a priority than what you were offering. So how do I shift that way of thinking, that identity from where they're spending that current money, and start getting them to spend it on what you're offering, your solution, so you can solve their problems? And I want you to write this down. Sigmund Freud said it best. People do who they believe they are. Let me repeat that. People do who they believe they are. So what he was saying in a shorter version is that people make decisions based on the identity of who they believe they are. So if their identity believes, I never make a rash decision, and you're selling to a consumer in a one-call close, or if they're a business, my identity is, I believe we have to get 6 different quotes. That is their belief system, their identity. So what objections are you always going to run up against? Those exact ones. I don't make rash decisions, or we need to get more quotes, okay? So I need to take them out of that identity and rebuild them into an identity who makes decisions quickly. You want me to show you a technique how to do that? But you're not doing it to them, you're doing it for them. Because if they don't buy, you can't solve their problems, they don't get where they want, okay? So let me give you a few examples. And this is called an NEPQ identity frame. Now, if you're not one of our clients, NEPQ stands for Neuro-Emotional Persuasion Questioning, okay? Methodology I developed studying behavioral science and neuropsychology at university, okay? So there are some tweaks to this based on what you sell. So let's say that you're into the conversation. This is not something you're going to say like the first question or the first words out of your mouth. You're going to ask some connection questions, 2-3 connection questions, and then I can get into this maybe a few minutes into the conversation as I'm opening them up. Because what's your goal as a salesperson? You want the prospect to open up to you, right? Because if they're closed off, if they're surface level, are you really going to make the sale? Unlikely, because they don't open up emotionally. So how do I get them open up emotionally? Here's a technique to do that. So let's say asked a few questions, blah, 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 blah. What was it about the ad that attracted your attention? Whatever you do, okay? Then I can go into this. It's interesting, happy we're connecting because, the type of person. I was just on this call with a guy a few minutes ago, and he was so closed off. Like, the type, like just one-word answers, thought he knew everything there was to know about marketing. And we all know that just comes from fear. We all know that people like that who can't open up about their problems are never going to be able to really scale their business. You know what I mean? Yeah, I know what I mean. I don't like the type either. Well, anyways, what were you hoping could happen by possibly working with us? Now, there was a lot there. Let me show you what I'm doing here. Okay, now I just use that as an example. If you sold a marketing agency, I could plug in anything right here. Okay, let me show you. Yeah, happy we're connecting. It's interesting. I just got off a call with a guy or a gal, whatever you want to say. And the type, she was so closed off. Now, why would I say she was so closed off? Why would I say one-word answers? Thought they knew everything there was to know about, and then you're going to plug in what you do. Let's say if you're a business consultant that comes in and helps them with SOPs to scale their business, I could say, thought they knew everything there was to know about how to run a business, whatever it is. See, this is what's called a negative identity. Does anybody want to be this person, the type, so closed off, one-word answers, thought they knew everything there was to know about blank? And we all know that just comes from fear. We all know that companies like that who can't open up about their problems are never going to be able to scale. Or we all know that people like that who can't open up about their issues are never going to get them solved. Whatever you want to say, that is a negative identity No one you're talking to wants to be associated with the person who's closed off out of fear, who never has success or who never gets what they want. There are some tweaks based off what you sell, okay? Nobody wants to be in this identity. Now, if I'm a salesperson, notice how I'm structuring this. Do I want my prospects closed off? Yes or no? No, I want them open. See how I'm doing that? Closed off. Do I want them to give me one-word answers? No, you want them to open up and answer stuff. You want them to go below the surface. Does anybody want to be associated with a person who has fear? Okay, I mean, we all know people. If I'm selling to a company, I'm going to say company. We all know who, like, people who can't open up about their problems. Now, if I'm a salesperson, do I want my prospects to tell me their problems? Yes. Do you see how I'm getting them to not want to be associated with this type of identity? It's harder for the prospect now, if you do this, to be closed off, to give you one-word answers, to act like they know everything there is to know about what you're doing or about, the subject matter, and who can't open up about their problems. Do you see how that identity works? So I have to really verbal pace that out. Okay, so watch what I'm doing. I'm going to do it for you again, okay? I'm already asking a few connection questions before this. I'm not going to start with this. That's important, okay? So maybe 2-3 minutes in. Yeah, and it's so interesting. I'm glad that we're connecting because I was just on a phone with this other guy just, maybe 30-40 minutes ago, and you know the type. You know the type, like the guy that gives you like the one-word answers, like so closed off, like he thought he knew everything there was to know about finance, and we all know that just comes from fear. I mean, we all know people like that who can't open up about their problems. It's going to be really hard for them to ever get solved. Do you know what I mean? Now that person's not going to be like, well, no, I'm like that. They're gonna be like, yeah, like those guys, like I don't, like those guys, yeah, you just can't trust them. So, anyways, what were you hoping could possibly happen by working with us? Or what were you hoping could happen by possibly working with us? See, I'm just going right into that next question, okay? Now, there's a lot more to this, and it has to be tweaked based off your industry, your product, your service, and you have to know when to use it and when not to use it. There are certain times you don't want to use it with certain prospects. If you want to know those details, text me 480-637-2944. Me or one of our sales trainers will get back to you. Sometimes it takes 1 to 2 business days. Be patient. And you want to master this thing we call selling, because I know you do. Click the subscribe button. We'll see you in the next video. Hope that helped.